The Galactic Council chamber hung in the endless dark between stars, a ring of black stone and shimmering light larger than most planets. Inside, silence pressed like a physical weight. 312 alien species watched from their floating platforms, their forms strange and varied, some made of crystal, others of living mist, some with too many eyes, others with none at all. At the center of it all, drifting in a small unshielded pod, were 3 humans. They wore plain gray uniforms with no insignia, no armor, no visible weapons. No warships waited outside. No fleet stood ready to strike. Just 3 people: Commander Elias Rourke, tall and calm with steady eyes; Diplomat Lyra Nessa, sharp and quiet, her fingers resting lightly on a small data pad; and Dr. Tovin Reed, older, with tired eyes that had seen too many secrets. Above them, the Speaker of the Council rose. Vorik of the Calith Concord stood nearly 10 meters tall, his body a shifting lattice of living crystal that hummed with deep, resonant tones. His voice did not come from a mouth. It vibrated through the very air, making bones tremble. Humanity, Vorik intoned, each word echoing like a gong struck in a tomb. You stand accused. The chamber's lights dimmed slightly, as if the universe itself held its breath. You have violated the Prime Accord, Vorik continued. You have weaponized temporal resonance, a forbidden science, sealed since the fall of the First Rings. Your actions threaten the stability of causality itself. For this crime, the Council grants you 12 cycles to answer. Fail, and your species will be excised from galactic civilization. Your world's quarantined. Your history erased. A murmur rippled through the chamber. Some delegates leaned forward, eager. Others turned away, already mourning. The Velnari, a race of armored insectoid warriors with black carapaces and red-lit eyes, tapped their claws together in satisfaction. They had pushed for this judgment for months. Elias Rourke stepped forward. He did not flinch. He did not raise his voice. He simply looked up at the towering speaker and said, "We're not here to defend ourselves." A ripple of confusion passed through the chamber. What kind of prisoner refused to plead? "We're here," Elias said, "to repay a debt." Lyra handed him a small sphere, smooth silver, no larger than a human fist. It looked ordinary, almost primitive compared to the glowing tech of the Council. Elias activated it with a touch. The sphere pulsed once, then went dark. For a heartbeat, nothing happened. Then the lights in the chamber flickered, not just the ambient glow, but the core illumination of every delegate's platform. Neural implants across the room sparked with static. The great data streams that flowed through the Council's central archive stuttered and froze. And then, on the massive central display that had shown galactic maps and legal records for 10,000 years, something new appeared. It was a signal. Ancient. Faint. But unmistakable. It played as sound and image and genetic code all at once. A cry for help sent across time, encoded not in radio waves or light, but in the very structure of DNA. And woven through it, clear as a heartbeat, were human genetic markers. Gasps filled the chamber. The Silthian delegate, a being of pure logic housed in a glass shell, trembled visibly. "Impossible," their translator whispered. "That signal predates recorded history by 8 millennia, before the Calith rose, before the Velnari crawled from their hives, before any of us." Vorik's crystalline form darkened. "What is this trick, human?" "No trick," said Dr. Reed, stepping beside Elias. His voice was soft but firm. "We found it buried deep beneath Earth's oceans, inside a vessel older than your oldest ruins. It wasn't meant for machines to read. It was meant for us to feel." Lyra added, "Your archives say nothing of this. But your ancestors knew. Someone out there, long gone, placed a seed in our blood. And now it's waking up." The Velnari commander slammed a clawed fist onto his console. "Lies, they're using forbidden tech to manipulate the archive. Seize them." But before the Council guards could move, the central display changed again. The signal wasn't just playing, it was responding. As if the galaxy itself had heard humanity speak. New data flooded the screen. Star charts no one recognized. Symbols that matched no known language, yet somehow made sense to the human mind. And at the center of it all, a single phrase repeated in 1,000 forms through light, sound, emotion, memory. "The debt-bearers have returned." No one in the chamber understood what that meant, except, perhaps, the humans. Elias looked around at the frightened, angry, confused faces of the galaxy's most powerful beings. "You called us here to judge us," he said quietly. "But the real judgment is just beginning." Outside the chamber, far beyond the ring of judgment, something stirred in the void. Not a ship, not a weapon, something older, something waiting. On Earth, in hidden labs and quiet towns, billions of humans paused. They didn't know why, but for a moment, they all felt the same thing, a deep, quiet hum in their bones, like a song they'd forgotten but always knew. Back in the chamber, Vorex's voice returned, lower now, uncertain. "Explain yourselves now." Elias met his gaze. "We will. But first you need to understand we didn't break your laws. We answered a call your history erased." The Velnari began powering up their hidden fleet near the Sol system. They thought Earth was defenseless. They thought humanity was bluffing. They were wrong. But no one knew that yet. Not even the humans themselves. As the council argued, as alarms blared in distant command centers, as the galaxy teetered on the edge of panic, the three humans stood together in silence. They had no army, no empire, no grand fleet. But they had something the galaxy had long forgotten. Memory, purpose, and a promise made in the dark. Long before stars had names, the countdown had begun, not to destruction, but to remembrance. And the galaxy would never be the same. 3 months before the judgment, deep beneath the crushing weight of the Pacific Ocean, a team of human scientists found something that should not exist. It lay buried in sediment older than mountains, hidden in a trench so deep sunlight had never touched it. The object was smooth, black, and shaped like a teardrop. No seams, no doors, no signs of wear. Yet it hummed with a low, steady pulse that matched the rhythm of a human heartbeat. Dr. Tovin Reed had led the dive. He stood in the submersible's cramped cabin, watching through thick glass as robotic arms gently brushed away layers of time. When the surface sensors finally made contact, the object responded, not with energy, but with warmth. And then impossibly it opened. Inside was no machinery, no alien script, just a single chamber lined with soft organic material that glowed faintly blue. At its center floated a sphere of liquid light. When Reed's team took a sample, the light seeped into their skin, and for a moment every scientist on the ship remembered things they had never lived. A sky with 3 suns, a city built inside a hollow moon, a voice whispering, "When the dead is called, you will know." They brought the sphere to the surface in total secrecy. Within days, global networks of human researchers, biologists, linguists, quantum physicists, even poets, began sharing dreams. Not random dreams, the same dream, over and over. A vast silent library made of light, where every book was a memory and every memory belonged to someone else. That was when they understood. The object wasn't a ship. It was a key, and humanity was the lock. Back in the Galactic Council chamber, chaos still reigned. The ancient signal, now looping endlessly on the central display, had shaken the foundations of galactic history. The Kalith, who prided themselves on perfect records, found no mention of debt-bearers in any archive. The Silthians ran simulations until their logic cores overheated. The Velnari, tired of talk, had already moved. Their fleet, 500 warships, each larger than a city, slipped through folded space and emerged at the edge of Earth's solar system. They expected panic. They expected pleas. They expected humans to beg for mercy. Instead, Earth went quiet. All human colonies across nearby star systems powered down their comms, shut off their engines, and vanished from every sensor grid. No distress calls. No military alerts. Just silence. On Mars, children kept going to school. In orbit around Titan, miners finished their shifts. In the forests of Earth, birds still sang. But every human, from the youngest to the oldest, felt the same pull, a quiet command echoing in their bones. Wait, watch, remember. The Velnari commander, General Crix, growled as his scanners found nothing. "They're hiding," he snarled to his second-in-command. "Scour every planet. Burn their cities if you must. They cannot vanish." But Earth was not hiding. It was preparing. While the galaxy watched the Council's drama unfold, humanity had been doing something no other species could. Connecting. Not through wires or waves, but through something deeper. Scientists discovered that human brains, when in deep sleep, emitted faint quantum signals that could link across light years. One mind could touch another, not with words but with feeling, with memory, with will. And now, under the weight of the Velnari threat, those links grew stronger. In Geneva, a retired teacher dreamed of standing on an alien shore, watching a silver tide roll in. In Nairobi, a young engineer felt the cold of a dead star on her skin. In Buenos Aires, a musician heard a song made of silence and understood it perfectly. They were not just dreaming. They were remembering a past that was not theirs. The past of the ones who came before. The ones who left the teardrop in the ocean. Back in the council chamber, Lyra Nessa stood before the confused and angry delegates. "You think we broke your laws," she said, her voice calm but firm. "But we were following an older law. One written not in data but in blood." Vorac's crystalline form shimmered with doubt. "Prove it." Lyra turned to Elias. He nodded. From a hidden pocket he pulled a small vial, filled with the same blue liquid from the ocean trench. He placed it on the council's truth stone, a device that could detect lies by measuring bioresonance. The moment the liquid touched the stone, the entire chamber lit up with images. Not human images, alien ones. Civilizations rising and falling, wars ending not with bombs but with shared grief, species choosing peace not because they had to, but because they remembered what it felt like to lose everything. The Velnari delegate tried to shut it off, but the truth stone would not obey. It had recognized something deeper than law. It had recognized truth. Outside, the Velnari fleet reached Earth's orbit. General Crix ordered his ships to fire warning shots. Energy beams lanced toward the planet, only to bend and vanish before they hit the atmosphere. Sensors screamed. "Impossible!" cried a Velnari officer. "The planet is surrounded by a field that bends space, time, and gravity." Crix snarled. "Then we go in. Ground troops, burn it from the surface." But as their dropships launched, something strange happened. The humans below did not run. They did not fight. They simply looked up, and in that moment, every human on Earth, every man, woman, and child, closed their eyes and thought the same thought. You are not alone. The Velnari soldiers, hardened by centuries of war, felt it the moment they entered the atmosphere. A wave of emotion hit them. Not fear, not anger, but sorrow. Not for themselves, but for the Velnari. They saw visions of their own young playing in hive nurseries. They felt the weight of every life they had taken. They remembered joy they had forgotten. One by one, the dropships landed, but no soldiers stepped out with weapons raised. They stepped out, crying. General Crix stared at his screens in horror. What is this? Some kind of mind weapon? But it wasn't a weapon. It was a mirror. Back in the council chamber, Elias spoke again. We could have destroyed your fleet. We could have erased your homeworld from time. But we chose not to. Because the ones who gave us this gift, they taught us that true strength is not in taking but in giving. Vorac was silent for a long time. Then he said, "If this is true, then the galaxy owes you more than judgment. It owes you an apology." But Elias shook his head. "We don't want apologies. We want you to remember. Something is coming. Something even we don't fully understand. And when it arrives, the galaxy must stand together, or fall alone." As if on cue, a new alert flashed across every screen in the chamber. This time, the signal did not come from Earth. It came from the galactic core. Stronger, clearer. And this time, it was counting down. 72 hours. The humans exchanged glances. They knew what it meant. The debt was not just about the past. It was about what came next. And the galaxy was not ready. But humanity was. Because while others built empires, humans had been learning to listen. And now the universe was finally speaking back. The truth came not in words but in dreams. For 3 nights in a row, every human on Earth and on every colony ship, station, and outpost across known space dreamed the same dream. They stood on a plane of glass under a sky with no stars. Before them rose a tower made of light, and inside that tower memories floated like fireflies. Each one held a life, a joy, a loss, a choice. Dr. Tovan Reed was the first to understand. We weren't uplifted, he told Elias and Lyra in a secure bunker beneath the Swiss Alps. We were designed, not to conquer, not to rule, but to remember. The data from the ocean trench combined with the signal from the galactic core painted a clear picture. Long ago, before the oldest alien empires rose, a race known only as the architects had walked the galaxy. They saw civilizations burn themselves out with war, pride, and fear, so they tried something new. They seeded worlds not with technology, but with potential. On one quiet blue planet, they placed a species that could feel deeply, adapt quickly, and connect without speaking. They encoded their hope into human DNA. That was the real secret. Human minds were quantum linked at a biological level. Not all the time, only when needed. Only when the galaxy forgot itself. Now, with the countdown from the core ticking down, 72 hours and falling, humanity had to decide what to do. The Velnari fleet still hovered near Earth, confused and shaken. Their soldiers refused to fight. Their commanders argued in hushed, trembling voices. Back in the council chamber, the mood had shifted. Fear had turned to awe. Even the proudest delegates now watched the humans with something like reverence. But Elias knew better than to trust it. They respect us now because they're afraid, he told Lyra. But fear doesn't last. We need them to understand. So Earth made its move, not with weapons, not with threats, with memory. At exactly 0300 hours Earth time, every human on the planet and every human within range of the quantum network closed their eyes and focused. They didn't think of war. They didn't think of victory. They thought of a single moment, a Velnari child alone in a nursery, tracing the scar on its carapace from its first training drill. The sting of pride, the ache for comfort, that memory, borrowed from a Velnari soldier's mind during the dropship incident, was sent out like a ripple, and it spread. Across the galaxy, every sentient being with a neural implant or a biological mind felt it. The cold logic of the Silthians cracked as they experienced raw emotion for the first time. The Caliph wept as they remembered losses they never had. Even the council speaker, Vorak, stood frozen as centuries of rigid judgment melted into something softer, something like regret. The humans weren't attacking. They were sharing, and in that sharing, walls fell. General Crix aboard his flagship clutched his chest as the memory hit him. He saw his own son, small, scared, trying to be brave during his first combat trial. He hadn't thought of him in years. Now tears, real hot tears, slid down his armored face. What is this?" he whispered. "It's truth," came a voice over his comms. It was Elias speaking directly to him. "You don't have to be what they made you. You can be more," Crix wanted to rage, to deny it, but the feeling was too real, too human. On Earth, cities stayed calm. No alarms, no panic. People gathered in parks, in homes, in silence. They held hands. They breathed together. And their minds, linked by something older than language, formed a single will, a temporary consciousness made of billions of souls. This was humanity's real power. Not ships, not bombs, unity. Meanwhile, the countdown continued. 50 hours, 40. The signal from the galactic core grew stronger, pulsing like a heartbeat. Scientists across species tried to decode it, but it made no sense in any known format. Only humans understood, because it wasn't data. It was a question. "Are you ready?" Back in the council chamber, Vorak finally spoke. "If this is real, if your species truly carries the legacy of the architects, then you must act. But know this, if you fail, the collapse will not be just yours. It will be all of ours," Elias nodded. "We know," Lyra stepped forward. "We don't want to rule. We don't want power. We just want the galaxy to remember that it's connected, that every life matters." The chamber fell silent. Even the Velnari delegate lowered his head. Then, without warning, the central display changed. The countdown stopped. For a single breathless moment, the number read 0, but nothing exploded. No black hole opened. No ancient weapon fired. Instead, the signal shifted. It was no longer a countdown. It was a welcome. And from the heart of the galactic core, something began to move. Not a ship. Not an army. A presence, vast, calm, watching. The humans felt it first. A warmth in their bones. A voice without sound. "You have passed the first test." Elias looked at his team. "It's not over." "It's just beginning," Dr. Reed whispered. "They're coming." "Who?" Lyra asked. "The ones who left the debt?" In orbit, the Velnari fleet powered down its weapons. General Crix gave a single order. "Stand by. Do not engage. Observe." On Earth, children looked up at the night sky. They didn't know why, but they smiled, because for the first time in a long time the universe felt kind. But the humans knew better than to relax. The architects hadn't left a gift. They'd left a responsibility, and responsibilities, once accepted, could not be returned. As the hours passed, the shared consciousness of humanity held steady. They were ready, not to fight, not to flee, but to face whatever came next with open eyes and open hearts, because that was the true power of humanity, not strength, not speed, but the courage to care when the whole galaxy had forgotten how, and somewhere, deep in the dark between stars, something ancient stirred and smiled. The signal from the galactic core was no longer a countdown. It was a call, and it was growing louder. Every hour it pulsed through space like a heartbeat, not in sound or light, but in feeling. A deep, quiet hum that made stars tremble and minds awaken. Across the galaxy, species that had never dreamed before began to see visions in their sleep. Old enemies sat together in silence, sharing memories they did not know they carried. The Velnari stopped sharpening their claws. The Silthians shut down their war algorithms. Even the Council, once proud and rigid, now moved with hesitation, as if afraid to break something fragile. But not everyone welcomed the change. Deep in the outer arms of the galaxy, a group of powerful factions met in secret. They called themselves the Preservers of Order. To them, the human broadcast was not a gift, it was a disease. Emotion, they argued, weakened civilizations. Logic, control, and strength were the only paths to survival. And humanity, with its strange power to make others feel, was a threat to everything they had built. They sent a message to the Council: shut down Earth's signal, or they would do it themselves. Back on Earth, Elias stood on a quiet hill outside Reykjavik, watching the northern lights dance. He knew what was coming. The calm would not last. "They're scared," he said to Lyra, who stood beside him. "And scared people do dangerous things." Dr. Reed joined them, holding a small device that glowed faintly. "The core signal? It's not just a welcome, it's a test. The architects didn't just want us to remember. They wanted us to choose." "Choose what?" Lyra asked. "Whether to keep the galaxy safe, or to set it free." The choice weighed heavy. The human broadcast, the shared memories, the emotional link was holding the galaxy together. But it was also fragile. If the Preservers attacked, the connection could break. Billions might lose the newfound empathy in an instant, falling back into old hatreds, old wars. Elias knew there was only one way to protect it. He returned to the council chamber, not as a prisoner this time, but as a speaker. The delegates watched him in silence as he stepped onto the central platform. No guards, no escorts, just one man in a gray uniform. "You've seen what we can do," Elias said, his voice calm. "We could shield Earth, we could hide our signal. We could fight the Preservers if they come." He paused. "But we won't." A murmur rose in the chamber. "Instead," Elias continued, "we offer you a choice. Keep the connection, or let it go. If you choose fear, we will shut it down. We will erase our signal from every mind. We will return to silence, and you can go back to your old ways, your wars, your pride, your loneliness." He looked at Vorak. "But if you choose to remember, then stand with us, not as rulers, not as soldiers, but as equals." Then he did something no one expected. He knelt, not in surrender, but in offering. From his pocket, he pulled a small crystal, the last piece of the teardrop ship from the ocean trench. He placed it on the floor of the chamber. "This holds the full memory archive. Every joy, every sorrow, every truth the architects left behind. Take it, share it, or destroy it. The choice is yours." For a long moment no one moved. Then General Crix of the Velnari stepped forward. He had come alone, without armor, without weapons. He looked at the crystal, then at Elias. "My people have known only war for 10,000 cycles," he said, his voice rough but quiet. "But last night, my son asked me why I never smiled. I did not know how to answer." He placed a clawed hand over the crystal. "We choose to remember." One by one, the delegates followed. The Silthians, their glass shells glowing with new warmth. The Kalith, their crystals shimmering with soft light. Even the Preservers' representatives, those who had come to watch, hesitated, then stepped forward. But not all. A single ship, black and sharp as a knife, detached from the edge of the chamber. It belonged to the Order of Pure Logic, one of the most extreme preserver factions. Without warning, it fired, not at Elias, not at the Council, at the crystal. The energy beam struck the floor just as Lyra threw herself in front of it. She vanished in a flash of light, but the crystal did not break. Instead, it flared with blinding brilliance and the beam reversed, folding back into the ship that fired it. The vessel didn't explode. It simply stopped, all systems dead, its crew unharmed but frozen in place, overwhelmed by a flood of memories, of love they had denied, of pain they had ignored, of lives they had erased. Silence returned. Then, slowly, Lyra stood up. She was unharmed. The beam had passed through her, but in that moment she had shared every human memory with the shooter. Not as punishment. As invitation, Elias helped her up. She looked at the frozen ship and whispered, "They'll understand, in time." Now the real test came. The Preserver's main fleet, over 2,000 ships, was already moving towards Sol. They would arrive in less than a day. They believed emotion was weakness. They believed humanity's power was a trick, and they were ready to burn Earth to prove it. But Earth did not prepare weapons. Instead, every human on the planet and on every colony gathered in open spaces. In fields, on rooftops, in silent rooms, they closed their eyes, and they began to broadcast not just memories, but a choice, a final offer. "If you destroy us," the signal said, not in words but in feeling, "you destroy the last chance for the galaxy to heal. We will not fight. We will not hide. We will simply stop." And with that, Earth began to power down. Cities dimmed. Ships went dark. The quantum network slowed. The shared consciousness began to fade. It was the ultimate act of trust, not defiance, not strength, but surrender, on their own terms. The Preserver fleet arrived at the edge of the solar system. Their commander, a being of pure logic named Zenthar, expected resistance. Instead, he found silence. Earth's defenses were offline. No signals, no broadcasts, just a quiet blue planet spinning in the dark. He ordered a scan. The results stunned him. Humanity was preparing to erase itself, not through war, but through stillness. If the fleet fired, there would be no one left to remember, no one to carry the debt, no one to pass on the architect's gift. Zenthar hesitated. For the first time in his life, logic failed him, because in that silence, he felt something he could not compute. Grief. Not for humans, for his own people, for all the beauty they had ignored in their quest for control. He turned to his crew. "Hold fire, then softly ask them what they want." Back on Earth, Elias received the message. He smiled. "They want to remember," he said, and with that the broadcast returned, not stronger, but deeper, not just memories, but hope. As the Preserver ships hung in orbit, their crews began to weep, not from fear, from relief. Because after thousands of years of cold certainty, they had finally remembered what it meant to be alive. And in that moment, the galaxy took its first true breath in 10,000 years. The sky above Earth did not crack open with fire. No ancient weapon descended. No godlike being spoke in thunder. Instead, from the heart of the galactic core, a single point of light drifted outward, slow, steady, and calm. It moved not through space, but through meaning. Every species that watched it felt something different. A parent's touch, a lost song, the first breath after grief. To humans, it felt like coming home. The light reached the edge of the solar system and stopped. It pulsed once gently like a question. Elias stood on the same hill in Iceland, Lyra and Dr. Reed beside him. They did not speak. They did not need to. They knew what was coming. The final choice. Not theirs alone, but the galaxy's. The light was the last architect, not a machine. Not a ghost. A being of pure memory and will, preserved in stasis since the time before stars had names. It had watched. It had waited. And now, it had returned to see if the seed it planted had grown. The council gathered in orbit, not in their grand chamber, but in simple ships, side by side. Calith next to Velnari, Silthians beside preservers. No thrones, no ranks, just beings together, watching the light. The architect did not speak in words. It spoke in understanding. It showed them all what could have been, a galaxy torn apart by endless war, species vanishing one by one, silence spreading like frost across the stars. And then it showed them what was, a fragile web of connection, woven by humans, held together by shared pain and shared joy. Then it turned its attention to Earth, to humanity. You are not the strongest, the architect's presence whispered in every mind. Not the fastest, not the smartest, but you were the ones who remembered to care. Elias stepped forward, though he stood on solid ground and the architect was light years away. We didn't do it alone, he said aloud, knowing it would be heard. You gave us the seed. The galaxy watered it, we just let it grow. The architect pulsed again, softer this time. Approval, pride, farewell. And then it offered its final gift. It did not give them weapons. It did not give them power. It gave them freedom. You may keep me, it said. I can guide you, shape you, protect you from your own mistakes. The council held its breath. To have a living architect, wisdom beyond time, was a dream older than civilization. But Elias shook his head. No, he said. Silence fell. You've carried us long enough, he continued. Now it's our turn. Not to follow, but to choose. The architect did not argue, it simply smiled, in the way light smiles when it touches water. Then it dissolved. Not into nothing, but into everything. Its essence scattered across the galaxy like stardust, not as a ruler, but as a whisper. A nudge in the right direction, a memory that feels like intuition, a kindness that comes from nowhere. It would not command, it would only remind, and in that moment the Galactic Council ended, not with a vote, not with a law, but with a shared decision. From that day on, there would be no more council. No more judgment chambers, no more empires deciding who deserved to live. In its place rose something new, the concord of equals. Every species, no matter how small, would have a voice. Every world, no matter how young, would be heard. Earth did not lead it, Earth served it. Humans returned to their homes, not as heroes, but as neighbors. They rebuilt not with monuments to victory, but with schools that taught empathy, with gardens that grew food for strangers, with stories that reminded everyone we are not alone. On Mars, children learned alien songs. On Valnari hives, warriors taught their young to paint. In the ruins of old battlefields, new cities rose, built by many hands, speaking many tongues, sharing one dream. Years passed. The memory of the judgment faded, but the change remained. Wars did not vanish overnight, but they ended faster. Leaders listened more. People looked up at the stars not with fear, but with wonder. One evening, on the edge of the Red Sea, a little girl named Mira sat with her grandmother. She pointed to the sky. "Grandma, why did the stars used to be scary?" Her grandmother smiled. "Because people forgot they were connected. They thought they were alone." "Are we alone now?" Mira asked. "No," the old woman said, taking her hand. "We never were. We just needed someone to remind us." Mira thought about that. Then she whispered, "Was it the humans?" "Yes," her grandmother said. "But not because they were strong. Because they were kind when it was hard to be. Because they chose to repay a debt no one asked them to pay." Mira looked back at the stars. "I want to be like that." "You already are," her grandmother said. Far away on a quiet moon orbiting a nameless star, Elias Rourke stood alone. He watched a new colony take root. Humans and Valnari working side by side, planting trees that would take 100 years to grow. He didn't speak. He didn't need to. He knew the debt was paid, not with gold, not with blood, with trust, with time, with the quiet courage to believe that even the smallest species could carry the weight of the universe if they carried it together. And as the twin suns set behind the hills, painting the sky in colors no one had names for yet, Elias smiled, because the galaxy had not just remembered, it had healed, and humanity, once judged as reckless, dangerous, and strange, was now remembered for something far greater, for showing the stars how to be human, and that, more than any empire or weapon, was a legacy that would never fade.